Okay, back in the 76. So a little bit of a trivia for y'all on these parking brakes and guys that have been around for a while and or gals or wherever you are with your history on vehicles. So this is pretty obvious what you got here, right? So, but here, what do you think that is? That is parking brake. So the interesting thing about this parking brake, it's also an emergency brake. Now, there's been some controversy over a period of time of what a parking brake is as opposed to an emergency brake. Well, parking brakes were on sedans, early, probably post-war, 40s, post-war, mid to late 40, 45, 46, obviously 46 and later. Parking brakes. So, because cars had mostly manual transmissions. So you had 3 on the tree, which you guys remember what that is. It's 3-speed shifter, but it's on the column. Pretty cool. So what happens is that the car would actually roll. It could roll in gear. So you had to have something to keep it. There was no parking pole because there was no automatics. So you had these type of parking brakes, right? So you had a handle somewhere. It could have been down here on the bottom. Most of them were actually on the right-hand side of the car. Like right down in here. Everything was in this area back in the 40s, late 40s and on. And of course, you know the evolution of it all now. But what's interesting is when you get into the trucks, you get into something a little bit different. So we're not going to talk about automatics, right? So it's manual gearboxes. So the reason why they don't apply the emergency brake handle, when you pull this handle, that's the release. You grab it and squeeze it and pull it. And you might have seen these on your school buses when you were a kid, and the driver would always put it in neutral, let the clutch out and pull that back, open the door, let your Hanyakers butts out the door. Well, when you pulled that handle, it didn't apply any of the brake components that go to the wheels, such as, brake calipers, brake shoes, or anything like that. The hydraulics of the vehicle were done right here, okay? Hydraulic pressure. So when you pulled that, there was not technology or a mechanism to apply brake shoes or any other mechanical device to the vehicle. So what they did with this is, and I won't crawl underneath the truck, but picture where the driveline comes out of transmission. There's a great big huge drum there. It looks like a brake drum right behind the transmission output shaft. And it has a great big 12.5 inch, 4.5 inch wide brake shoe. So when you pull this lever, it applies a brake shoe, what we have come to know that would apply the rear brakes on cars, like on your passenger car. When you set the parking brake, it'll apply the rear brakes through this, various mechanisms, right? It's a whole nother subject. But in this case, in these early days, they would just lock the driveline. Actually, it's very efficient, and it was still being used up until probably 8 years ago. Now that we have electric applications, even your over-the-road trucks have some more electric parking brake. So the difference between a parking brake and an emergency brake. So a parking brake was to hold the vehicle stable at its maximum gross vehicle weight rating along a certain incline. Okay, so usually it's about 6% incline. It is maximum vehicle weight. So this truck will hold at 6% incline, 14,000 gross vehicle weight rating. So the maximum this truck can weigh is 24,000 pounds. So it has to hold 24,000 pounds at 6% incline in neutral. That's just the math. I know everybody's going to laugh, but that is what the calculation was, and I'll be damned if it doesn't do it, probably. So it's very effective to hold the drive line. So as we evolved into automatic transmissions, well, don't need to do that anymore. And even with trucks, with the 10 speeds and 18 speeds and air brakes. Well, if we knock the air off, we can apply the brakes. So it's a little bit different. But back in the day when you didn't have diesels in these trucks and you had vacuum, hydromatic brakes, huge booster under the truck, that was your service brake. Then you had your parking or emergency brake. So this was actually called a parking brake back then, not an emergency brake. It can be used as an emergency brake, but think about it. If I got 26,000 pounds going down a straight surface and I apply that, it's only one drum. I'm not going to stop this vehicle. So this was one of the problems that these big trucks had, was stopping. Braking power was a problem. Hence no tachometer, but a big vacuum gauge to tell you can stop. Now, of course, we have electric applied parking brakes and service brakes and hydrostatic, hydropneumatic braking systems, air brake systems, super huge safety systems. Yeah, these trucks didn't have it. If you lost your brakes on this, you better just, I think that's why they had big wide steps on them. So you can jump off. But that's what this truck has. It has a nice, huge hydraulic vacuum assisted service brake, and then a manual applied, actually it's through a lever, actually not a cable. It's applying a big huge brake in a drum right between the drive shaft and the, it's actually not attached to it, it's on the outer perimeter, so it just creates a huge friction load. It works very well for something like this, but that's how they did it back then. So just a little FYI, a little brake trivia for you. So we have hydrostatic, we have hydropneumatic, we have air brakes, and we have, of course, we have now, which is a completely autonomous braking system, so they're electric. So come a long way in 65 years. All right, just a little brake trivia for you. All right.